Hey everybody, in today's video we're going to talk about forgiving ourselves after Kratom addiction. When we are in the addiction itself to Kratom, it takes away the ability for us to feel any ability to reflect on what we're doing, how we're acting, how we're affecting others. We may feel it for little moments in between the doses and stuff, but the addiction takes center stage to basically all of our focus, all of our energy. And so when we quit this addiction, we're then able to see what we've been doing, and we're able to see how we've affected others and how we've affected ourselves. This coupled with the neurochemical aspect of recovery, especially the beginning parts of recovery, where after our initial quit, and then when we're in that probably 6 months even for some of us, but especially that first 1 to 3 months after we quit, our brains and our bodies are left in shambles by this addiction, especially if you've been using a larger amount like I was. So what's happening is we're left on the other side of this addiction with a very fickle, very difficult brain chemistry than we are used to dealing with. When we're in the addiction, we are having the dopamine and the serotonin of the substance. A lot of times as we go further into our addiction, we're really not feeling that like dopamine release where we feel super happy or anything, but it's giving us that numbness and that relief from both withdrawals and anxiety and all sorts of other things. So when we take away that relief and when we take away that numbness, and then we're left with this neurochemical aspect of our brains are basically depleted of any of our feel-good chemicals like dopamine and serotonin. So that's going to lend itself to finding ourselves in this space of extreme sadness and depression and anxiety and guilt and a feeling of what did I just do to myself and the people that I love and my life and my health? What did I do to my career? What did I do to my hair, my skin, my digestion? And that relief that the Kratom was giving us is gone. So we're left in this expanse of time that is not linear, because recovery, as we talk about a lot on this channel, it's not a linear process. And so we don't know how long we're going to feel this way. And because that's one of the interesting things about neurochemistry and just, how our brains and our bodies work. When we are experiencing this, we're not able to look at things objectively. We're not able to oftentimes step outside of ourselves and say, okay, you know what? I'm in recovery right now. I'm in post-acute withdrawal syndrome right now. I'm in acute withdrawals right now. The acutes, we know that we're in them, but when you start stepping into that territory past that, it's really hard to see sometimes things objectively. It's really hard to see that, all right, I don't have any dopamine in my brain that's going to give me a feeling of satisfaction and contentment. I don't really have any serotonin in my brain right now that's going to give me a feeling of happiness and peace. I don't really have any oxytocin right now that's going to give me the feelings of love and connection with another person. So when we're in this space, it's really easy to get down on ourselves. It's really easy to look at the years, the months, the days that have passed and the way that our health has been affected or the way that our relationships or careers have been affected. And so I wanted to make this video because this is something that is very important to talk about in recovery. This is something that is what can make us want to use again. And so I hope and my intention with this is that we can talk about this and we can shine some light on this and we can encourage and uplift each other in this difficult space. And I want to remind you that this is not going to last forever. I want to remind you that your neurochemistry right now after this addiction is all messed up, but it will heal and it will get better. I want to remind you that no matter how much damage has been done to your life and to your relationships and to your career and to your health, that everything will get better and things will heal. It's going to take time. It's going to take work. It's going to take perseverance and patience and sacrifice, but I promise you that it will get better. I'm going to share a little bit about my personal experience first, and then we're going to bring it back around and we're going to talk about how this applies to everybody. So when I quit my 3-year Kratom addiction, my life was in complete shambles. My health was wrecked. I was 90 pounds at the very most. I had lost more than half of my hair. My eyes were sunken in and hollow. My skin was dry and scaly. I had ended the work that I was doing in my life, and I didn't know where my career path was going to go from there. I had messed up pretty much every single relationship in my life. Thank God above, my husband is an amazing man who is so patient and who is so loving and who stuck by my side even when I was telling him that I wanted him to leave. And he stuck with me. But everybody else, I basically pushed away, or they ended up just kind of distancing themselves from me because I was so horrible in my addiction. I was so self-consumed and volatile because of the addiction itself and needing to be constantly focused on it. And then also because the way that Kratom affected my personality, especially as I got into the larger doses, I just became so irritable and I would lash out at the drop of a dime. And so all of my relationships distanced themselves from me. My son was going on his late teens at the time, and our relationship was one of the ones that was affected the most. And it's one of the ones that I carried so much pain and guilt with me through my addiction. And then when I got out of my addiction, I had to come to terms with not only the damage that I had done to me and my son's relationship, but also the time that was lost because of it. And so I found myself in a really deep, dark place because of that, because I love my son with all of my being. And I didn't know how it was going to get better for a while. And I'm going to be straight up with you. It took time. And it took, in recovery and in sobriety, becoming my real authentic self that my son was able to relate to and that he was able to want to connect to and build a relationship with again. And it took time after time over these 4 years of recovery, almost 4 years, it'll be 4 years and 2 months. It took time after time of showing up and of being present. And at first it took a lot of effort and energy on my part to do that and to be that. But then as the years went on into my recovery, it became natural to just be myself. And it became natural to just show up for him. And it did take time. It took probably until this year to really start to see headway in rebuilding with him. And I still, to this day, in my relationship with my son, who's now grown, he's moved out of the house, he has his own life that I'm so proud that he's living. But I still have to be very meticulous and intentional in my interactions with him. I'm able to be natural in the sense of who I am and how I show up for him. But I always think about when I'm interacting with him, how I can be patient, how I can be kind, how I can be loving, how I can be encouraging. And I think that that's really good, because what that is it's this unspoken accountability for myself. And I haven't gotten to the point yet where I share about my addiction with my son, but I know that the time is going to come. And I know that there's going to be the chance for me to really tell him everything and to be honest with him. And I know that there's going to be the chance for me to set an example for him. And the time has not come yet, because for me, I've found that the best way to go about things with my son is to keep things very light and to keep them focused on him, because there were so many years of our relationship while I was in that addiction where it was about me. So I try to intentionally put my energy into showing up and being there for him, and that he's the focus. And so I found a lot of healing, not only in our relationship between him and I, but also in the healing aspect of recovery from this addiction for me. So what does this have to do with you? More than one of you have shared with me that you are struggling in especially the first parts of your recovery, where you are experiencing this extreme guilt, like what I was just sharing about how I felt. And I want to let you know, like we were saying a moment ago, that this is not going to last forever. And I want to let you know that this is an opportunity for you. It was an opportunity for me as well. It still is an opportunity for me as well, because I'll probably struggle with, the guilt of the time lost for the rest of my life. But what I've turned it into, and what you can turn it into too, is the opportunity to change and the opportunity to show up authentically, not under the influence of a substance, for yourself in your life and in your relationships and in your health. These feelings of guilt for what was lost are actually opportunities. They are the chance to become the people who we are supposed to be, not the people who we've become in the addiction. So feeling guilt and feeling shame and feeling sadness from that is completely normal when we come out of kratom addiction. But it's almost like a grieving in a way, where we've lost things that we can't get back to these addictions, and there needs to be the space and the time held for that. And we're allowed to feel bad. We're allowed to grieve what we've lost to these addictions. But there's a time where that's not going to do us any good any longer. And we have to turn it into action, and we have to turn it into the change that's going to make us into these better people. And that is going to improve our lives and our health and our relationships. And how we do that is one day at a time. I know it sounds cliche, but it's completely true. It takes one day at a time, sometimes one moment at a time, where we choose to stay sober. We choose not to use kratom. We choose that when, we get that itch or that desire or the pain is becoming too much, We choose sobriety over relapse and using again. And so every opportunity that we have in these feelings of guilt and loss and grief, that then becomes the roadmap to the change into the people that we're meant to be and into the lives that we are supposed to live. So holding space for this grief and this sadness at first, especially if you're in the first 3 to 6 months, for me, it was a year of holding space for this grief. And we're allowed to feel bad. We are allowed to feel the sadness of what was lost. We are allowed to, and we should feel the sadness for the things that we've done, because that's showing that we have the ability to take accountability for the choices that we've made. If we didn't feel this way, if we didn't feel bad for what we did, then we wouldn't be able to recognize that we've done something wrong and that we need to change. So it's a good thing. It's a blessing in disguise that we feel this way. But like I said, there's a time and a space for it. And if we find ourselves going into, like I said, it took me a year, a solid year, because I had a lot of challenges with post-acute withdrawal stuff, the pause stuff. I was grieving the loss of 2 close family members, so I was having actual grief woven into this process. But I wouldn't recommend, if you don't have all these external factors like what I had going on, I wouldn't recommend spending a whole year, giving yourself the time and the space of a whole year. But you know what? If that's what you need, that's what you need. But the point of what I'm saying is that there's going to be a time where it's going to become counterproductive for us to be doing this. So when that time has come, and I believe that we're going to know that, okay, this is taking up too much of my mental landscape, my mental real estate. This is consuming my thoughts. And that can keep us stuck, that can keep us stuck in depression and being overly critical of ourselves and anxiety. And then it's going to become counterproductive for us rebuilding whatever it is, our health, our life, our relationships. So there comes a time when we need to move forward, and we need to, after we've given that time and that space to grieve what we've done, the choices that we've made, the time that we've lost, the relationships that have been affected. And then I believe that it's good to have that be the fuel that we move forward with, that will motivate us in our recovery process and in the changes that then need to be made. So forgiving ourselves is a big part of this process, and that's the point of this video. Forgiving ourselves, if we can't forgive ourselves, we really can't forgive anybody else. And it's a process, you guys. This isn't like an overnight thing where, we just wake up and then we're 100% and we don't feel anything about the things that we did. Like I said, it's a process. It's a grieving process. It's an accountability process. But forgiving ourselves is important. It's crucial. It's required for us to move forward in sobriety. I talk about this in some of my videos. The 10-step stuff never resonated completely for me, but I found a lot of value in different aspects of not the 10-step, my bad, shows how much I'm connected to it, the 12-step process. And that's like AA, NA, all of that kind of stuff. I've read all of the literature, and although the program itself didn't really resonate with me completely, I gained a lot of insight by different aspects of what the steps were. And there's one of the steps where it talks about taking a fearless moral inventory. And then there's a step that talks about making amends with those who have wronged us or that we have wronged them. And I bring this up in relationship to what we're talking about because I do believe that this is a critical part of sobriety. The reason why it's in the 12-step process is because These are some of the things that are huge stumbling blocks for a lot of us, and that can cause a lot of us and drive a lot of us to want to use again. And what this does by both taking a fearless moral inventory of ourselves and our lives and our decisions and all of that kind of stuff, things that we've done, and then also making amends for the things that we've done, is it lifts a weight off of us that causes us a lot of pain and suffering, and that will make us want to use. So I bring this up in relationship to what we're talking about because it has great value. And I encourage you that if you're feeling like you're in this place of you don't know how to forgive yourself for the things that you've done and the relationships that you've affected in this addiction, I encourage you, not in the very beginning parts of recovery. If you're in the first 3 months, I'd really focus on just getting through day to day and focusing on your self-care, meaning sleeping. I know a lot of us have struggles with sleeping, but getting yourself on a sleep schedule, even if you're not actually sleeping, but getting yourself on a routine. Eating is very important. Eating 3 meals a day or more if you're trying to gain weight, like I was after quitting Kratom. And meeting these basic core primal needs, I think, are the most important thing when we're in these about first 3 months after our final quit of Kratom. And we can start to unpack things as we move forward in recovery. These first 3 months are so raw. We are so delicate. We are so, everything is tough in these first 3 months. Our body and our brain are rewiring after the addiction. And so really being gentle and nurturing ourselves in this time is so important. We can start to get into as we move forward, and you're going to feel the progression too. Like I keep saying, recovery is not linear, but there's an unfolding to it, and there's a progression and a momentum that it takes on that you're going to start to sense innately, internally within yourself. You're going to feel that momentum building as you move forward. And it's really important not to take on too much at first, because it's going to be really easy to get overwhelmed and feel defeated. Unpacking all of these deep, beautiful aspects of the recovery process are going to come, but it's going to take time. And the whole forgiving ourselves part of it is going to be one of those deeper, beautiful aspects of recovery. In the beginning part, it's about learning and meeting your needs that have oftentimes been thrown to the wayside while in addiction. And part of that, because you're not going to be able to get to that, the marrow of forgiving yourself until you start to move forward in the recovery process. But one of the aspects of that you're going to get into as you move forward that can apply to the beginning parts of recovery are being gentle on yourself and nurturing yourself. Because when we're in that space of guilt and beating ourselves up for and being overly critical of ourselves, of what we've done in our addiction, we are not being gentle on ourselves, and we are not loving ourselves and nurturing ourselves, which is really what we need during this time. Because if we're going to beat ourselves up, it's going to really be a roadblock in recovery. And like I was saying before with the 12-step thing, those feelings of being hard on ourselves and being critical on ourselves and thinking about the things that we've done and beating ourselves up, that's going to, ultimately make us want to use again, because the pain of that is just too much to bear for a lot of us. So right now, and taking it one step at a time, not the 12 steps, but one step at a time, with the unfolding of this recovery process for yourself. And the beginning part of it is being gentle on yourself. There's going to be the time that's going to come where there's going to need to be more discipline, and there's going to be the need to take that fearless moral inventory of looking at what we've done. But that's going to come later on in recovery. And what that can look like, just to kind of lay out like a little bit of a rough framework for you, is that when we get to that point, when there has been the unfolding of the recovery process like we're talking about, and the momentum that's going to build as you get your health back in order and as you gain the strength, both physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, as you move forward in recovery, you're going to feel that momentum build, and you're going to feel that desire to want to take that inventory and to want to be able to, either if it's with your, different aspects of your life where I made a mess of my life. I had to take a good solid year, basically my second year of recovery. And it was like this rebuilding process where I started to, one at a time, notch away at the things that I had basically made a mess of and address them one thing at a time. And in my relationships, how that looked was I had to go to the people that I had either pushed away or that I had hurt by, lashing out and saying things that I shouldn't have said to them, or by being self-consumed by the addiction and not, being able to be present and show up for them in our relationship. And I had to, one at a time, in their own very unique ways, because every situation was different. I talked about things with my son, but for other people in my family, I had to go to them and I had to say, in different ways that I was wrong and that I took accountability for what I did. I had to do that with my son, but it was more of like an acting out, a more of like a showing up and doing it through action instead of saying to him, I take accountability. That wouldn't have been cool with us and our dynamic. So I had to address everything one at a time, basically in its own way. And you're going to know when that time comes. And I bring this up because as you move forward in your recovery process and as that momentum builds and you come to the time and the space where it's time to address these different things, you're going to know, because you're going to be ready for it, and you're going to want that. You're going to want to address things. When you're in the first really messy, raw parts of recovery right after you quit, it's not possible to do these things. You have to focus on yourself first. There's that old thing that they say where if the plane's going down, you got to put the mask on yourself before you help the people next to you. And that's really what it's like in recovery, where you have to take care of yourself first. And then as things unfold, then you're going to get into all of this other stuff. And how this goes hand in hand with forgiving ourselves is that you're going to get to the point where you're going to put in this work. And you will have earned this with yourself. You will have earned, forgiveness is unfortunately not a very cut and dry thing for a lot of us. And there has to be the effort and the energy and the work that's put in. And we earn the forgiveness with ourselves as we move forward in our recovery and as we begin, as the momentum builds, to make the things right that we have messed up in our addiction. And there's going to be the time where the guilt that you have at this point in your recovery, especially if you're in the early aspects of your recovery, there's going to be a time where you're going to look back and you're going to see how important that was. Because as you move forward and you make those changes and you put in that work and you show up for yourself and your health improves and you show up in your relationships and you take accountability and you start to see this transformation in your life, then you're going to look back on that time when you were hard on yourself and you're going to realize how it played into the eventual unfolding of how your life becomes what you've always dreamed that it would become. So I want to let you know, as you're in that place of guilt right now, as you're in that place of shame and beating yourself up about what you've done, that holding space for that is okay. Feeling bad is okay. But I want to let you know that can, and I encourage for you to allow it to become the fuel that's going to help this momentum be gained through your recovery process. So then as you move forward, you're going to be able to recreate everything. And forgiving yourself is then easy because you've become a different person and you've made right the things that you have wronged because of this addiction. So this is for those of you out there that are struggling with this, and this is to remind you that this is not going to last forever, and that this is a great opportunity for you. So I hope that you're able to find peace in that. And I thank you for watching this, and I'll see you next time. Bye.